Good evening and welcome to WDCB's celebration of International Jazz Day, broadcast live from PianoForte Studios in Chicago. I'm Leslie Karras, and tonight we're spending an hour with Chicago composer, pianist, and arranger Robert Irving III and his quartet. We'll get to the music in just a moment, but first I'd like to mention that we are broadcasting from the studios at PianoForte Chicago, which is dedicated to helping people love the piano. More information is available at pianofortechicago.com. And WDCB gratefully acknowledges Dan J. Epstein, Judy Giedelman, and the Epstein Family Foundation for their support of WDCB's special programming celebrating Jazz Appreciation Month and International Jazz Day in Chicago. And now, on to our artist this evening. A Chicago native, Robert Irving III was in his mid-20s when he met Miles Davis and would work with him as a composer, arranger, bandmate, and producer in the 1980s. You'll find Irving's work on such albums as Man with the Horn, You're Under Arrest, and Decoy, among others. But besides his work with Miles, Irving has collaborated with some of the finest artists in jazz, including Ramsey Lewis, Wayne Shorter, Pharoah Sanders, Branford Marsalis, Donald Byrd, Patrice Rushen, Wallace Roney, Jerry Allen, and many others. At the same time, he's led his own bands, composed original works for small and large ensembles, and mentored students through the Jazz Institute of Chicago. Tonight, Robert Irving will be joined by trumpeter Irving Kortman, bassist Josh Ramos, and drummer Charles Rick Heath. Without further ado, let's put our hands together for the Robert Irving III Quartet, live from PianoForte on WDCB. We are enjoying a performance tonight by the Robert Irving III Quartet here at PianoForte Chicago. I'm Leslie Karras, and tonight we are celebrating International Jazz Day with a special live broadcast here on 90.9 FM WDCB. Musicians you just heard from, as I mentioned, Robert Irving III, the fearless leader at the piano. We have Irving Portman on the trumpet. Josh Ramos on the bass. And Charles Rick Heath on the drums. Now, you know, Robert, the way you ended that tune, I'd have no idea that you're the music director at Olivet.
Well, except that the title is 7 Steps to Heaven.
That's right, 7 Steps to Heaven. And I was thinking, too, about the way you introduced that tune. It reminded me just a little bit of the way you recorded it on your album, New Momentum. Yeah. So here we are. It's Miles Davis's centennial, and we want to talk about your work with Miles, of course, but I'd like to dive a little bit more into your background here in Chicago, the kind of music you were surrounded with in your family, the kind of music you were playing and you were hearing. Tell us about that.
Well, yeah, thank you, Leslie, and thank you all for being here. It's a great pleasure. I grew up in Hyde Park, I guess you could, or Kenwood area, 4737 Kenwood, in a big house. We were there for a short time, and when we moved to Robert Taylor Homes in the interim before my dad bought a house in Chatham. And that was quite fortunate and fortuitous because right across the street was Omega Baptist Church. And that's where Jesse Dixon, the famous gospel singer, well, he wasn't famous then, but he was the organist at that church. And he was the first person that I saw and heard to play the organ. And I pointed and I said, I want to do that. I want to do that.
Wow.
And when my grandmother would come from North Carolina, she would take us around the corner to Bishop Ford's church. And that's the highway is named after Bishop Lewis Henry Ford. And I was there when Edwin Hawkins Singers came and sang "Oh Happy Day," did when they debuted it. And of course, that music was very jazz influenced, as you know. And so I got to jazz through gospel, and because there's always been this love affair between those genres. And so later on, I learned that my uncle in Chicago, Bishop Moses Cross, was a contemporary of Bishop Ford, and they were both bishops in different archdioceses. And within that family, there were probably 10 musicians, including the same family as Charles Heath is my cousin. Those were a lot of his uncles, and they were a lot of my dad's cousins.
Wow.
And then when we went to visit North Carolina, then I learned that there was this whole entire church family there, and the Cohen family, and spelled like the Cohen. My mother was born a Cohen, and it's just a long other story which you'll read about in my memoir. But plug. But my Aunt Letty Cohen, she actually was a pickup pianist for Bessie Smith when she was 18.
A pickup pianist for Bessie Smith.
Whenever Bessie Smith would come to North Carolina or Virginia, then she would, and because of segregation, she had to play behind a partition, so she couldn't be seen on stage, and because of her age too, and because she was a woman, because of most.
Wow.
And so from that came a whole nother experience in gospel music, and so I sort of brought some of that jazz influence to gospel in North Carolina, and I'm accused of changing the whole culture down there.
There wasn't a whole lot of jazz at the time.
There wasn't. On radio, there was jazz radio, sort of like here, where there was the jazz radio in Virginia that you could barely hear.
Okay.
But I would
sort of like on the lake here in Chicago. But anyway, go ahead.
But I would listen, and on Saturdays especially, and I would research titles. And I'd go to the record shop, and I had to special order the vinyl.
So you would walk in the door, and they'd see you with your list. Yep. Here we go.
Yeah, exactly. So that's how I sort of educated myself. But by the time my mother passed away, and we moved to North Carolina for 8 years. And so fortuitous once again, because it was people that I met in North Carolina that led me to Miles Davis.
Tell me about that.
So I had a top 40 band. I went to college for business administration. I went into the insurance business. Concurrent to that, I had a top 40 band down there called Your Mama. And we were opening act for a lot of Coliseum groups like Jimmy Castor Bunch and Kool and the Gang and those groups. And my the vice president of the insurance company had been a saxophone player. He said, Irving, he says, I've heard a lot about your band. He says, that was my passion. He says, and if I were you, I'd get the hell out of North Carolina.
Back to Chicago as fast as you can?
Or Chicago. But he didn't know I was from Chicago.
Oh, I see.
He said, go to New York or L.A. But I had roots in Chicago, and most of those roots were...
And we have jazz here, too.
Yeah, exactly. Because I did 2 years of high school here, and my band director at the high school, his big band, the Moonlighters Big Band, George Hunter and the Moonlighters, was Don Myrick and Louis Satterfield. In fact, Louis Satterfield had offered me bass lessons, and of course he played trombone with Earth, Wind and Fire. But so I kind of reconnected with that whole Earth, Wind and Fire family.
Wow!
And started working with. That's how I started working with Ramsey, and so it was a cousin in North Carolina who was a drummer, Kevin Tynes. He said, I got a cousin in Chicago who's a keyboard player and singer with Ramsey Lewis on the Earth, Wind and Fire on the Sun Goddess tour, and you should look her up. And so when I got back, she was the first person I looked up, and she invited me to a party for Debbie Dunn, the keyboard player of Larry Dunn from Earth, Wind and Fire. And that was at the home of Charles Stephanie, who had just passed, who was a producer for Earth, Wind and Fire. And eventually met Tom 84 and all those people. And
I mean, the names that you're dropping are just phenomenal. Oh, my goodness. An entire universe of talent.
Yeah. Wow. So that's how it all just serendipitously kind of came together. So.
Well, I know that we've got a set list here, so we could chat all night. But I'd love to hear a little more music. And there's one that you've got coming up that's from your pen. If you can tell us about it. This is inspired by the music that you've made in Poland.
Yeah. So it's ironic that my very first performance with Miles Davis was at the Jazz Jamboree in Warsaw, Poland. In 1983, behind the Iron Curtain.
Wasn't that right around your birthday, too?
It was on my birthday.
Okay. Oh, my goodness.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so the irony is that Poznan is a sister city of Chicago, and there the Jazz Institute with Lauren Deutsch produced the Made in Chicago Festival in Poland. And for at least a decade, and I probably did about half of those performances in Poznan. I had also toured Poland for an entire month previous to that, and I say in '99, with a Polish backup band with Randy Brecker. Mm-hmm. And we both had Polish backup bands on the same tour. And so I spent a month there, so I really got a lot of. So anyway, I had this dream in Poland, in Poznan, and a lot of music comes from dreams. I woke up, I notated it, and I recorded it into my computer just as a reference. And I put it away, and I didn't even open it for about 2 years. And when the director of the Poznan Festival passed away and they asked us to come and play the memorial, I said, well, what can I do? And I found that file.
Oh, wow.
And I named it Poznan Dream. And in the dream, the music played in the tree. It was on a tree trunk. That you heard this melody. So anyway, it's on the Generations album, and this is our version of it, Poznan Dream.
Robert Irving III. Robert Irving III, here at PianoForte Studios, here in Chicago, WDCB's celebration of International Jazz Day on 90.9 FM WDCB. And Robert, I know everybody is wanting to hear the story, of course, of how you met Miles Davis and how he first heard your music. But I also wanted to briefly talk about what it was like to meet Miles at that time of his life, vis-a-vis that time in your life. You were in your mid-20s. He was having some challenges. And so I'd love to talk briefly about how you navigated that with him.
Yeah, so it starts back, again, with me having met folks in North Carolina who actually worked with Betty Davis, who was Miles' wife at the time. And they were her backup band. They were her cousins. And they were sort of a rival group with my band. So at that time, I was already 1 degree of separation from Miles, didn't know it. But when I got to Chicago and I met that whole Earth, Wind & Fire crew.
Those late 70s?
In 79.
Mm-hmm.
And so Tom, 84, the arranger for Earth, Wind & Fire, he took us into the studio to record our band. So when I say our band, that consisted of Vince Wilburn, Miles' nephew, on drums. So Miles' sister was Vince's mother. Dorothy, she was a school teacher on the South Side. And Randy Hall was the guitarist. We had a couple of horn players at the time and a bass player by the name of Felton Cruz. And so we went in the studio, we did a demo, presumably for Maurice White to hear and decide to sign the band or not. Miles would call in and listen to the rehearsals. And then after the rehearsals, he would get on the phone with each of us individually and ask questions about the music. At the time, he was a voice on the phone. I didn't know a lot about his music other than Bitches Brew. I hadn't gone back and done all of that research. I was 25. Mm-hmm. And so that led to his interest in a composition of mine entitled Space.
What do you think he heard in that composition?
Well, it was very jazz fusion-y. It had clavinet, it had mini moog. It was melodic and funky. It was sort of it would have provided him with continuity from the things that he had done on Jack Johnson or Kilimanjaro, those kind of those things. And so he finally asked Vince to send him a cassette tape. He sent him a cassette tape, and then he called me at home, and he said, "Can you come to New York and record that?"
Oh my goodness!
And he's like, "Of course."
What a question!
So we get on the plane, and only four of us, no horn players, just the rhythm section, and we check in at the Sheridan Center. Dr. George Butler was then the president of the jazz department, vice president of the jazz department. He said, "Just sign the bill, order food," and we seriously abused the privilege.
It all comes out now, huh?
But they were happy because Miles was coming back, and he hadn't played in like 5 or 6 years.
Right.
And so they were willing to do whatever it takes. And so he called me up at the hotel and he said, "I'm sending a limo over for you to come by." I said, "What about the rest of the guys?" "Just you." I said, "Okay." So I get there, and he's surprised that I'm the same height, because I thought he was much taller.
Isn't
and he
that
thought
funny?
I was much taller.
So
Hearing my
there
voice
you are,
on the
eye
phone.
level, right?
So now all of a sudden he wants to dress me, So we go upstairs and we have a long conversation about my background as a horn player, because I've started with on all the brass
That's right.
instruments.
You did not start on the piano.
No,
Yeah.
I started in the drum and bugle corps when we were at Robert Taylor Homes. I was in the Robert Taylor drum and bugle corps and marched in the Bud Billiken parade. Maybe 65 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so by the time I got to DuSable Upper Grade Center, which is 6th and 7th grade, that was the feeder program for Captain Walter Dyett's high school program. So that's why Captain Dyatt had such good players, because they were already, by the time they got to high school, they were fluent in 5 instruments. So I wanted to play saxophone, but because I had experience on brass, they said, "No, you're going to play brass." So they put me on mellophone, which is like French horn. I went from that to cornet to baritone horn, valve trombone. Later on, at Hirsch High School, it was slide trombone with the likes of Edwin Williams, who went on to play with Mercer Ellington. And so Miles and I talked about this. And so I think he really appreciated the fact that I knew something about the horn, about brass. And so finally he had me to go to the piano and play something. And then he said, check this out. And he came to sit at the piano, and I stood up to let him, and he said, no, just stay there, because he wanted me to have a bird's eye view. So he reached over my shoulder.
Oh my goodness.
And he played these tension and release harmonies that you heard in my intro, some of those. And it was like a light bulb turned on in my head in terms of harmonic possibility. And I got it. And so I sat there probably for a good 40 minutes just working out the different harmonies that were based on this.
And he was listening the whole time?
And he was sitting on the couch with,
no pressure
with
there.
a .22 caliber pistol that he toyed around with. So if I got anything wrong, I guess. But
oh my goodness!
But so
what an audition!
And so but every time I hit on something interesting, he said, "Yeah, you got it, you heard it," you know. So then he said to me, he says, "I heard you cook a mean dirty rice," because at the rehearsals I would cook vegetable fried rice, sometimes salmon fried rice, and for the guys, and so my reputation had preceded me, and Miles knew all about it, and he was a cook. So he said, "Here's a $100 bill. The limo's coming. Go buy your ingredients for your dish," and said, "Get me things, like scallions and shrimp and stuff."
Oh, that's so funny.
And so we cooked a meal together. And so after the meal was all prepared, then he said, "Now call the guys and invite them over for dinner." And that was the beginning.
Well, you obviously, oh my goodness! I mean, you clearly charmed him with your cooking, but very much so with your music too. So there he was. He hadn't been playing a whole lot of trumpet at the time. So how did that work in terms of working with him and his band?
Well, so initially, we set up workshop in his living room, or his living room downstairs. The entrance, it was a stucco walls, and there was nothing down there but Heineken cases, and so and so he had us to order the equipment we needed, and he said, "Order me a Farfisa organ," and so that's what he played, and we would have developmental jam sessions basically where we would just develop new music, and he would infuse it with this dissonant harmonies and tension and release. But our music was a little bit more pop leaning, and I didn't understand why at the time that was so. But I found out years later from Al Foster that George Butler had been positioned or had been propositioned by Vince's mother to get a deal for our band, and George said, "Absolutely, but Miles has got to play on it." Mm-hmm. So in a way, we were doing our music for Miles to play on. And so by the time we had done about 2 months of this, developmental and recording, T.L. Macero, the producer, said, "Bobby," he says, "this is all great," he says, "but without the trumpet of Miles, it's not going anywhere."
Right.
And I said, "Yeah, I know." He said, but he couldn't tell Miles because he and Miles had falling out over Quiet Nights. And so here we go in the limo on the way home, and I said, "Miles, we really like to have your trumpet, the sound of your trumpet on this music." He said, "What's wrong? You don't like my organ playing?" I'm like, "Well, Miles, no, but we'd like to hear the man with the horn." He said, yeah, okay. So that Monday he brought his horn. And he slowly unpacked it, and he got the mouthpiece, and he put it in. And when he put it up to his lips, you could tell he had it here, but the lip is unforgiving. The embouchure was not developed. And I knew from playing long tones to develop just a good, decent, clean tone on the horn. It took sometimes months. So immediately George Butler sent us home, because they knew that Miles didn't have it. And so that was probably September. By December or so, Miles called me up and said, "Bobby, check this out." And you could tell he'd been playing those long tones for the last 3 months. And he was on the way back. He was about 70%
Wow.
back, yeah. You know.
Well, you know what I'm thinking? You've got a tune here that Miles wrote that you were planning to perform, and I wonder if you're about ready to do that.
Sure, sure.
And I think you mentioned to me off mic that a little bit of vocalizing might happen here.
A little bit, yeah. So I did a Miles entrainment project for the Winter Jazz Fest that I headlined in February. So my son and I did this as a spoken word and with vocal, and so he and I collaborated on the lyrics. And Say Leem is, of course, Miles spelled backwards, and it was on the Live Evil album, of course, and Live Evil backwards.
Uh-huh.
And the story is that Humberto Pascual, who we just lost maybe a year ago, was the actual composer and player on that session. And Miles loved it so much that Humberto, he gifted the song to Miles.
Okay.
Yeah. So even though Miles's name is on it legally, Humberto is was the actual composer. So it's Say Leem.
Mm-hmm. Robert Irving III at PianoForte on 90.9 FM, WDCB.
With kind of
100 years before us, they played another chorus. 100 years before us, miles
You've been enjoying a performance by the Robert Irving III Quartet here on 90.9 FM WDCB. Irving Quartman on the trumpet. Josh Ramos on the bass. Charles McKeith on the drums. Robert Irving III at the piano, ladies and gentlemen.